This is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition. Today we're talking with Andrew Sinclair of MadLab Coffee in Los Angeles, California. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I am your host for the show, and I'm so happy to have you along today for Founder Friday for September, and it is going to be a really great conversation. I guarantee it. So if you're new to the show, or if you're not new to the show, I would encourage you to subscribe to Keys to the Shop, and that way you'll always get updated with new episodes as they come out. Usually there's about 10 episodes, 10 broadcasts per month. This month we have the sustainability series that I released yesterday. It's a 4-part series, and that's out too. So there's always something going on at Keys to the Shop, and I'd love for you to stay updated with all of that stuff. So hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you would, it'd be really awesome if you'd share these episodes, share Keys to the Shop with your friends, spread the word about what Keys to the Shop offers with resources like these interviews today and different topics that are covered, and just spread the love. Thank you so much, everybody. Now, today's episode is brought to you in part by Keys to the Shop Consulting, where I get to work directly with you to help you start your business, your coffee business, on the right foot, or help your existing cafe business level up the operations, people, and quality, whether that's on site with training or cafe assessments, or over the phone remote consultation. There's a lot of different ways that working with Keys to the Shop Consulting can give you clarity and build foundations for success. I'd love to talk with you about what that might look like for you. So if you're interested to learn more and want to set up a free discovery call with me, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS@keystotheshop.com for Keys to the Shop Consulting. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. The amazing folks over at Prima Coffee are one of the world's best specialty coffee equipment suppliers, curating the best equipment from all over the world and then working with you to make sure that what you buy, what you end up with, is actually the right choice for your business. And it's not a one-size-fits-all thing when it comes to equipment, and working with somebody who you can trust to have your best interest in mind is really important. So go to their website, prima-coffee.com/keys. You'll see for yourself the awesome selection everywhere from small wares to espresso machines, grinders, brewers, under-counter refrigeration. They have it all, and resources to help you not only learn the equipment well, but make awesome coffee too. Right now, Keys to the Shop listeners get 5% off their entire order by using the code KEYS5, that's KEYS and the number 5, at checkout. It's a really generous offer. So again, whether you're just starting your business or need to upgrade the equipment that you have now, I definitely encourage you to go visit Prima Coffee for all your commercial coffee equipment needs. Again, that website to visit, prima-coffee.com/keys. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Barista series from Pacific, the world's leader and standard setter for plant-based beverages. They call them performance beverages because that's exactly what they do on your bar. Created for and tested by some of the world's best baristas, the extensive lineup in the Barista series gives you excellence in every cup, stands up to the heat from steaming, produces amazing texture for latte art, and also keeps the balance of the beverage focused on coffee. So go to pacificfoodservice.com, get this in your store and try it for yourself. I know you're going to be impressed by what they offer. Your customers will as well. If you want to offer the best plant-based beverage experience, then you need to be working with the Barista series from Pacific. All right, everyone, welcome to the Founder Friday episode for September 2021. And today we are going to be talking with Andrew Sinclair, who is the owner and founder of MadLab Coffee that is based in Los Angeles, California. Andrew has over a decade of coffee experience in roasting, in barista work, in management, and cafe ownership. His roastery and cafe in LA is not only one of the most recommended to people visiting Los Angeles, but also considered one of the best in the United States. And as you'll see in this interview, Andrew not only provides a quality product and a quality cafe experience, but is also an incredible representative and spokesperson for the Los Angeles coffee community. His passion for people, culture, community, and generally just loving people through what he does with coffee is palpable. He brings that incredible energy to his business and to this conversation as we talk about his journey in the coffee industry, his ups and downs, lessons learned, and the eventual founding of MadLab, its growth, the values that drive him, and the message he has for all of us through all of these experiences is truly inspiring. If you're looking to get really hyped up about what it means to be a professional in specialty coffee, and I think all of us can really use a lot of encouragement right now in the industry. Things just don't seem to be getting easier. This conversation is sure to work some magic. So without anything else from me, let's get right to this Founder Friday for September. Here now is my conversation with the founder of MadLab Coffee, Andrew Sinclair. All right, Andrew, welcome to Keys to the Shop. Glad to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
I am excited to kind of dig into your story a little bit, and I've been following your progress over the last few years here. And I love your approach to hospitality and your approach to business, your energy. I love a lot of things about MadLab. And I'm curious to kind of hear, right from the get-go, how you have a history in coffee, I assume, or do you? Like, where did you come from? How did this happen for you?
Well, first, thank you for the kind words. I need more kind words this year. That means a lot. How I got started is I think how a lot of people got started in coffee. I was working a job that I didn't like, and I was going to coffee shops every day here in Southern California, and I just fell in love with working in coffee shops and making coffee. I did the whole buy the good grinder and the pour over set. Oh, here's my Chemex and my Chemex filters, and got really, really into it. And I got to the point to the shop that I was frequenting said, "Hey, have you ever thought about working in coffee?" And I said, "You know what? This is the perfect time because I'm not enjoying my job that I'm at right now. I'll start working in coffee and we'll see what happens." Now, was the wife upset about this, that I was leaving a really good job that was paying really well for a coffee shop pay? Yeah, a little upset, but she knew I really enjoyed it. She saw that it brought me a lot of joy, and I just full pivoted into coffee and haven't looked back since.
Okay, so you started working at this store that you were frequenting?
Yep. And it was an old shop here in downtown LA. Doesn't exist anymore. It's now a shoe store, which is the story most of the times with coffee shops in Southern California, LA specific. It'll be a coffee shop for a couple of years and then it will change into something else. But yeah, it was a great job. I loved it. Started off as a dishwasher, then as a bar back, then as a barista, then a lead barista, then a manager, then an operator, and then an owner of the company until we sold the company. And when we sold that company, I was like, hey, I could start another company with what I got paid out from running this company. Look at that.
Well, that's pretty interesting. So you went from an enthusiast to becoming an owner of the place you frequented. I want to back up just a little bit there and explore that. So you climbed up in the ranks here at this coffee shop. Your kind of travels from enthusiast to professional. How did that originally feel to you, moving from the job you were in, appreciating coffee, to now coffee being your job?
I think when I first started, you have that kind of honeymoon phase for like a year, 2 years when you're in coffee, where you're like, I'm making this great product, everybody's going to really enjoy it. As an enthusiast, you have that every day. You just pick, coffees from all over the country. You have them sent to you. You can brew whatever, you coffee shop hop and things like that. And keeping that same energy going into working in coffee and keeping it is so incredibly hard. It's so incredibly hard because, 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, at a certain point, 1 or 2 years in, you're like, man, I wish I could wake up at 9 again and just make a coffee and not be stressed about this dial or not stressed about if I've helped this customer in the right way that's adequate for them, but, going from enthusiast to just full on, barista in in Los Angeles.
So then you became, a more adept at, barista work. And obviously we've all, anyone who's listening is in coffee experienced this hardship, but you stuck with it. You wanted to do this eventually to the point where you became an owner, as you obviously didn't become, embittered to the point of just burnout and saying, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. What was it that sustained you to pursue, higher levels of involvement in coffee, as hard as some of the things were?
Well, I mean, honestly, it was never my goal to start MadLab or start a company. It all just kind of happened. Because I'm married. My job and my mindset is that mindset of like, okay, I gotta bring home the bacon, I gotta bring home the paychecks. And so whenever I was working in coffee as a dishwasher, right, I did that for a couple months until I went to the owner and said, hey, listen, I would love to do bar back. Can I do bar back? Sure, yeah, you can do bar back. And then from bar back, I did that for a while and said, hey, I would really like to learn how to do barista work. So of course I went down the YouTube hole to try to like figure out how to do latte art, watching all the old Chris Baca latte art videos that he has on Vimeo and things like that, like learning how to do hearts and everything, because I never really had anybody out here that trained me or would want to train me on how to do coffee. And so I just kept figuring it out until the owner says, hey, Andrew, you're in this, your heart's in this, like, can you be manager, and then can you be operator? And most of the times those conversations came from me going to my owner and saying, hey, listen, I see that you're having to do all this work. Guess what? I'll do all that work for you. You just give me $4 extra an hour and I'll do that for you. And my owner was like, bet. Let's go. You'll do all of this for $4 more an hour? Let's go. Son, work ethic, love it. And I was like, cool. And at the end of the day, I was making more money, right? Until that owner, he wanted to go back to the country he was from. He was kind of just over here to start some businesses and then go back to Asia. And he was just like, hey, listen, I'm going back to Asia, man. How would you like to just run this shop, own it? Like, here you go. I said, oh, really? Oh, okay. Bet. Yeah, sounds great.
Just like that.
Legitimately just like that. And then it came about to where we did an event for a shoe company. The shoe company came into the space and they said, wow, it's a really good space. It's in a really good location here in LA. How much you want for the space, this building, the everything? And the owner was there and he gave him an outrageous number. I'm like, no way this guy's going to say yes. And the guy's like, well, market value seems right. How do you want that? You want cash, check, wire? What's best for you? And the owner looked at me and he says, hey, are you down with the severance package and percentage? I said, yep. And I want to be able to sell all the gear that is here and keep that money. And he said, okay, bet. Shook the guy's hand. And that was the end of that coffee shop.
Okay. So so much of what you've just described in your trajectory has been a lot of just taking a step out there and kind of, it sounds like just making it happen and responding to opportunities in a very like forward thinking way.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up, my dad's been working his whole life, right? And I watched the way that he kind of worked growing up, and his kind of mantra is always say yes. Even if you don't know how to do it, say yes. Be the first one to suggest I can do this job, even if you don't know how to do the job. And so that's kind of how I have always gone about just doing things. If somebody asks me for something, even if I don't know how to do it, I'll say, yeah, sure. And then I'll figure out how I could do it, or I'll find somebody who knows how to do it and turn that yes into a reality. I wouldn't call it work ethic. I would just call it a really bad adaptation of watching Yes Man with Jim Carrey in it too many times. So
Nice. So you at this point had been operating as, managing and owning this business, and then it was sold.
Yep.
Your transition into that role, was there any point in your transition role to role where you really had kind of where you said yes to it, and where you pursued it and said, okay, this is a little bit more than I had bargained for, and there's a significant challenge going from this position to this higher position, and now I have to overcome that?
Yeah, I think the biggest one was I'd done jobs before, being in coffee where I took care of lots of people. Before I was in coffee, I actually worked for Tesla Motors, right? And I was in charge of looking over a lot of people. And so, managing a business or a company is a lot different than managing people. And I think the hardest thing about being in the role of operator owner was all of a sudden, people that I work with coming to me and saying, "Hey, I'm dealing with this issue. I need you to fix it for me. I need you to help me find a way to fix what's going on, whether it be pay, a personal type of situation that they were going through." And I mean, in LA, man, it's hard. I had a lot of times people who worked at the shop. They said, "Hey, listen, I got to get a pay raise or else I'm homeless." I mean, everybody in LA is one paycheck away from being homeless. And that is the God honest truth. It is hard out here. It is hard out here working in coffee and having a livable wage. And at that time, I mean, the rent out here has always been like $1,600 to $2,000 a month for like a studio, right? And at that time, minimum wage was $9 an hour, and so I was paying my bills $9 an hour plus tips. Right. I didn't want to get paid more than everybody else at the shop. I was getting a percentage of revenue off of, that deal where I got to keep 5% of, total sales that happened at the shop. And I took that as payment. Right. Because I was a lot younger and a lot more didn't know how things worked. If I could go back in time and ask for a better raise, would I? 100%. But, at that time, I was working $9 an hour plus tips. And you would have, these employees come to you and say, "Hey, dude, listen, I'm behind. Either I have to get paid more, or A, I'm homeless, or B, I have to move back to Wisconsin or Michigan or Texas or Tennessee or Florida." Mm-hmm. And God almighty, I'm not about to let somebody that I know and love go back to live in Florida. I mean, that's God's waiting. I don't want that on anybody. So, having to figure out those types of issues, that was the biggest challenge, going from, look after the business into looking after the people. I think in that role, I figured out if you look after the people, the business is going to be exceptionally good. And, being in that role that I was in and learning how to, treat employees and listen to them, I learned something about the coffee community, that we are so just close to each other. People that we've never met. You can go and look at GoFundMe's from across the country of, hey, this barista needs our help. This roaster needs our help. This person in coffee needs our help. And they'll have a GoFundMe of like, $10,000. And then, you donate $5, $10, and you'll get on the next day and it'll say, "Oh, wow, we've raised $80,000, $90,000. Like That's such a testament for how the coffee community nationwide, I'd say really worldwide, we look after our own. We're this big, huge, like weird conglomerate of people who are just so supportive of each other. And it is really awe-inspiring if you put that lens onto the coffee community, knowing that it's bigger than just the shop you work at, the city that you make coffee, and that there are so many people around the country and around the world that are ready to just support you if there is an opportunity to support you. And, that's something I really learned about, managing people at the cafe level. It was an opportunity, right? It was an opportunity to sit back and say, "Wow, okay, cool. We get to support you right now. What do you need?" Right? Because in LA, if you're in a rough spot, it's a really rough spot. Yeah. And it's hard to get out of it. It is so hard to get out of it. People don't really know how hard this city can be. I mean, dude, this is the city where people move to work on their dreams, to be the next big person, right? And there's so much here in the city, but it's so also incredibly lonely, and it's so hard to make a living here, and so hard to pay rent and live in this vacation lifestyle that is Southern California. So having the support of an entire industry around you, man, it makes it a little bit easier.
I love that perspective of, the opportunity to support somebody. And you can come at it from a couple of different angles, right? A lot of people will say that, and it's not like it's easy to have to manage people. Managing people can be and is very difficult a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
But having the perspective of, that being an opportunity to serve or to support is kind of a game changer, because that doesn't it seems like it would prevent you from burnout, or at least prevent burnout from happening as soon.
Yeah, I mean, but burnout is when you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and you don't see anything good come out of it, right? That's just burnout. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you don't see anything coming out of it, that's when you're going to start getting burnt out. And I think the opportunity that, owners, managers, wherever you are in the totem pole where you're taking care of people, to realize, man, where is this burnout coming from is the more important thing, right? What are they not getting here that I could be giving them, right? Is it opportunity? Is it pay? Is it, financial freedom? What is it exactly that's causing them to get burned out? Because, dude, coffee's fun. Coffee's fun. There are so many different things that you can do in coffee. How are people getting burnt out? Are we getting burnt out because we're having to deal with some really weird customers right now? Oh, okay. Well, someone's getting burnt out because of that. Well, hey, let's find something that's not customer facing for you to do that you really enjoy, that's good for the company, and let's figure that out together, right? That's an opportunity to do something that's good for that person, but also good for your company at the same time. And I think right now, after the last 2 years, oh my gosh, we're tired. We're tired of some of that burnt out of being, customer facing. Because let's just be honest, some customers are just terrible. I mean, and some baristas, sometimes they're terrible, and you got to just hold people by the hand sometimes and say, "Hey, Bubba, what's going on?" Whether it be a customer or barista, and usually it's just people that are going through something, and you just got to slow everybody down and say, "Well, what's going on? Let's talk about it. What can we figure out that makes you happy?" That gets you in this mind space of everything's going to be all right, whether it be a customer or be an employee, right? Yeah. And for some reason this year and last year, you see a lot of burnout. And I don't understand why a lot of owners have kind of allowed that to happen. They've kind of taken their staff for granted. And I don't understand how you can do that. I mean, it's funny. Like, I can usually tell if somebody is a good owner or a bad owner right now, because they'll tell me, "Hey, listen, we just got a PPP loan, man. We're going to be fine. Our business is safe." I'm like, "Oh, great." And then they'll say, "So, Andrew, let's buy this new espresso machine." And I'm like, that's not what that money's supposed to be used for.
That's right. That's right.
And so you're seeing a lot of this kind of survival mode, but it's not survival mode. It's this different type of emotion and energy that I don't quite understand, but it's making me kind of understand who I want to work with and who I don't, though.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it definitely has, this last couple of years has exposed sort of the truth of people's motives and some of the anemic structures that are not there. They're there to support people. And I like, again, the idea of opportunity, but the idea of slowing down too. These are things that bring humanity into business. And sometimes we create this false dichotomy where you can either have one or the other. It's either going to be humanity with no profit, or you're going to have a business and no humanity. It seems like some people are making that choice. But I mean, when you obviously you saw this from an opportunity standpoint in this old business, but when it sold, you wanted to get right back into it because this is obviously something that you enjoyed doing. Challenges, sure, there was challenges, but tell us about how that went down that transition between the old shop and then starting MadLab?
Well, there's actually a pretty good gap in between that. I didn't go straight from cashing out into getting MadLab, right? It's funny. Whenever I stepped out of that, I sat down with my wife and I tried to figure out what LA needed as far as coffee goes, right? I didn't want to just be another person with another coffee shop in LA that is just kind of like, hey, we're here in the neighborhood we've never been to before, but we want to put a shop here, right? I didn't want to be that person. And so I tried to see what the need was for Los Angeles at that point in time. And that's like, oh, golly, 7, 8, 9 years ago, golly, whenever 2014, 15 was, I want to say.
Okay.
My math is not there. And I noticed that we did not have a lot of local roasters in Los Angeles at that time. Like we had some, we had the homies at like City Bean who have been doing this forever. Very underrated coffee roaster in LA. I love everything that they've ever roasted. Just hometown heroes, right? But besides them and a handful of others, there really wasn't a lot because Los Angeles has always been kind of a flag planting city for other companies, right? You had companies like Blue Bottle come in like, boom, flag, we're from LA. You have people from Stumptown playing a flag, boom, we're from LA. Intelli, boom, here's a flag, we're from LA. And I'm like, no. You're from the Northwest, you're from Chicago, and you're from San Francisco. None of y'all are really from Los Angeles. And still to this day, I'll never forgive Stumptown for making me wear flannel and Red Wings for like a whole 2 years when they got really popular out here. I'm never going to forgive them. I'm sorry. But we always had these flag planting roasteries in Los Angeles. And there wasn't this local pride. LA didn't really have, you go to New York and you have the coffee that's in New York. There is just this profile in New York, how all the coffee kind of tastes, because that's what the people in New York like to drink. Or you'll go to Seattle, same thing. Or you'll go to San Francisco, same thing. Or you go to Texas or Nashville or Tampa. Every city kind of has this profile that all the roasters, whether it's by accident or not, they all tend to roast the same way, right? Los Angeles didn't have that at the time at all. Everything was very different. You would go into one place that had coffee, it tasted so much different than somewhere else. And during that time, multi-roasters was the thing in Los Angeles. This shop would be serving Hart. This shop would be serving Cova. This one, 49th Parallel. All these different coffee roasters from different areas of the world, right? That was really big. And so I sat down and I was like, well, you know what? I want to learn how to roast. I want to teach myself how to do it. And I'm like, it can't be that hard. Oh boy, was I wrong. Roasters, for some reason, just don't like sharing how they do that voodoo that they do so well, right? Especially during that time, everything was like really secret. They're like, hey, this computer has our profiles on it. It's password protected. You can't steal them. And even not knowing anything about roasting at the time, I'm just kind of like, I feel like the profiles don't really matter that much because I don't think what you do here would work at somebody else's roastery who's roasting on a different machine in different weather in a different space. Like that never tracked with me. And so I looked around and I tried to find somebody to teach me how to roast. Nobody would do it. I tried to look and see how much classes were. It was way too much. I said, well, okay, I got to figure out something else to do. So I found a coffee shop in town that I really liked, always enjoyed their coffee, always. And I went to the owner and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to bat 100 with you right now. I want to work here. I will work for free however long as you want. I just want you to let me watch you roast. I just want to see how you do it. I want to be your apprentice. Can I just do that? And he looked at me like I was stupid. He says, no, I'm going to pay you, dummy.
Good.
But yeah, you can watch me roast if you want to. Like I was that annoying little brother, right? And every time he was roasting, I was there, I was watching. He wasn't teaching at all. He told me straight up, I don't have time to teach you how to do nothing. I said, All
All
right. So
right.
I just helped bag and tag until one day he was roasting a coffee and I noticed he hadn't done a thing that he usually does when you roast coffee. And I said, "Hey man, you forgot to do that thing." And he's like, "What thing?" I was like, "I don't know what it's called. I just know you forgot to do it. It's that thing where you usually, drop that thing down and you didn't do it this time." And he looked at me. He's like, "Well, you come roast this coffee then." I was like, "Okay." I had no idea what I was doing. I
Oh
just
man.
copied whatever he was doing and I just roasted blind. And at the end of it, he says, "Cool. There's about 40 more batches that need to be done. You got it." And he just left.
No way. Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I hope I don't burn this place down. And luckily I didn't. And then after that, I started roasting for that company and I learned as much as I could and tried to retain as much as I could. At that point, roasting started to make sense because then I started to just kind of learn the terminology for everything. That was the stuff nobody during that time would ever share. Like they wouldn't tell you what a turning point is. They wouldn't tell you what the drying phase is. They wouldn't tell you Maillard reaction. They would kind of talk about development, but if in a very arbitrary way, right? It just never. It was something people never just shared, and so I just kind of figured it out as best as I could. And once I felt somewhat comfortable, I started my company. I started MadLab, and was it really bad the first coffees that we roasted? Yes it was. It was absolutely terrible. I felt bad about putting my name on it, but I had to start somewhere. And so at the time I had some buddies that were they were doing some little nonprofit stuff, and I was just like, "Hey, listen, I'll give you this coffee for just the price of the green and you can give it out to free for people. Is it the best coffee in the world? No, but I would at least like somebody to be enjoying it." Right. And they said, "Yeah, no worries." And so I did that for a while until it was literally one day I get a call from Buddy. He goes, "Bro, what'd you do with this last coffee you roasted?" I said, "Well, I did this new thing that I tried." He goes, "Listen, keep doing that. All your other coffee tasted terrible, but this tastes really good, dude." I said, "All right." And I, just over years of doing it and talking, it's funny, once you actually have a roasting company, other roasters will then start talking to you, right? Because for some reason they see you as competition. So they kind of want to learn what you're doing, right? And all I'm saying is like, "Hey, yeah, here's everything. Here's all my profiles. This is exactly how I do everything. What is a turning point?" And they kind of look at me and they're like, "Kid, are you serious?" I'm like, dead serious. Just can't help me. And so finally I met some really cool guys out here that had started roasting companies, and we all became really close, and we started working more together, collaborating together. And since then, it's been a lot easier. But that was about a 2-year, 3-year journey getting to that point. And man, it was not easy. I mean, we were poor for a very long time, and I am blessed to have such a wonderful wife that was so supportive. Right? I mean, you can only have ramen so many nights, but she was. We now know how to make the best instant ramen than anybody else because we lived off of that stuff for so long. But I think that's what's hard sometimes about being in certain industries. The gatekeeping is just very real. Yeah. People do not want to share what they do. They feel if another company is going to, whether it be a coffee shop or roaster, whatever, they don't want to share what they're doing because they feel like that person's going to be a competitor. And it's very weird in LA because only 10% of our population in Los Angeles even drink specialty coffee. We still have so much work to do here, but people are still worried about if someone's going to steal their profile or if somebody's going to make the same, drink that they make as a specialty drink. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's very weird. I'm like, guys, why are we worried about this? There's not enough people drinking coffee here locally for us to even worry about that. Like, why do you think competing is even a thing? We're not competing. We're just trying to survive. Right. So, and it's harder too with LA. I think we have the largest coffee shop presence, like per capita, than anywhere else in the country right now. I think there's more coffee shops in Los Angeles than any other city in the country. right now.
Wow.
At least that's what it was in 2019. I don't quite know what it is in 2020, 2021. But, for there being so many coffee shops and only 10% of our population drinking specialty coffee, it's like, wow, okay, we are nowhere near finished with the amount of work we get to do here in this city with people and showing them like, hey, this is what it's about. Like, welcome. We have cookies, right?
So you started off by talking a little bit about having more local presence. Like a lot of the roasters are from outside of LA. You wanted to know what the neighborhood wanted and the community wanted, but then you had to learn all of this stuff yourself, to be able to do that, to execute that well. At what point did you start to feel so comfortable with your skills that you could actually sort of say, okay, this is who we are. I'm not just learning to roast right now. I'm delivering something that's unique to me and this brand that does speak to this place, this neighborhood, and it does address the things that I want a coffee company to address.
Yeah. So, I think the biggest thing is when you look at the big coffee shops who moved here, the flag planters, right? Now, locally, that's kind of what we call them. When the flag planters moved in, what they did is they talked to every single customer that was in their line and said, no, this is the way good coffee should taste, right? And you would just drink it and it's like, Meyer lemon, thanks for that, right? And that's what it was kind of in those early days. What we kind of wanted to do is not tell people this is what a good coffee tastes like. Enjoy from this. It had always this kind of uppity kind of feeling to it. Like, I'm blessing you with this product. Thank you. Well, no, you're going to make a product either way. You're going to roast a coffee either way, whether it's good or bad, and try to sell it, right? Instead, look at the people that are coming to support you and see them as the blessing that they are. A lot of times, I feel coffee people have it backwards. They're like, hey, I'm doing you a favor by making you this coffee, pal. Right? Or roasting this coffee for you, pal. And that's what it was a lot in the early days of specialty. I call it specialty coffee renaissance, right? Here in LA. What we wanted to do that was differently is I just listened to my neighbors, right? People that, were my friends, people that I interacted with as customers. I had years of being behind bar of seeing what customers were wanting, what they didn't want. And I think the thing with specialty coffee in Los Angeles is we started to listen to what our customers wanted, not what we wanted to give them, not what we said was quality, not what we said was the right way. We listened to them. And so in those early days of MadLab, I spent just a lot of time listening. Just like, hey, I'm going to listen. What do you want? How do you want it? Age old kind of example. Somebody comes in and asks for a caramel macchiato, right? A lot of coffee people will say, well, do you mean the Starbucks version or do you mean what we do? You know so well what they're talking about. They want a large sugary drink with a little bit of coffee and a lot of milk, and it's like really sweet. Make them that drink and look at them and say, hey, I don't have that exact thing, but I know what you're talking about. Try this. If you don't like it, you don't got to pay for it, right? That was kind of, the way that we did things at the shop that I was running, and to the shop that I started working at when I learned roasting. And I kind of took that mindset whenever I started MadLab, just listening to people like, hey, what kind of coffee are you looking for, right? And people say, well, I'm looking for a coffee that's just sweet. I just want something sweet. I kept hearing that over and over and over and over again. I just want a coffee that just tastes like fruit, because coffee's a fruit, right? And you'd be like, you know what, pal? It sure is. Let me get on that. Let me figure that out for you. And so after a while, a few of us roasters started roasting like that, right? And then customers started buying our coffees over other coffees. All of a sudden, all these other coffee companies started changing what they were doing in Los Angeles versus what they were doing in other places. Intelligentsia, a great example. If you have a cup of coffee from the roastery in Chicago versus a cup of coffee from the roastery in Los Angeles, it is very different. It is very different. And I think most roasters that have tried 2 bags from those 2 different roasteries would tell you it's different. And I think a lot of that is because the work that a lot of us did locally years ago of saying like, hey, what are we doing for our neighborhood, right? Are we giving our neighbors the product that they're asking us for? Or are we going to continue trying to just force a coffee down their throat that they don't want to drink? I mean, we can only tell people so many different type of lemons are in a bag of coffee, right? We can only do so much. And, and you start to notice those things, even me, if I have some customers on, in New York, right? I know exactly what that customer's wanting. They'll call me and say, hey, Andrew, listen, this coffee, you got to leave it in that roaster for a little bit longer, bud. I said, okay, no problem. And we'll do that. If you ask us, we'll do that because we want to give you the thing that you want, something that you're excited to serve, something that your customers are excited to drink. And you should never have this weird speech from behind bar that's, listen, Karen, let me tell you how we do things at Java the Hutt, okay? This is the type of, we should never be having those conversations. We should just be able to hear a customer say, hey, I'm looking for something like this. And I say, okay, gotcha. That'll be $4. I don't understand why it's so hard.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're giving people what they want. Mm-hmm. And you also said what you're proud to serve. So how do you balance that? At what point do you say, okay, well, I'm going to make a judgment call about the coffees that we bring in, for example, as a roaster. And then we're going to also kind of, synthesize that with, input from our customers. I guess that can only go so far before you say like, well, there's certain things we can't do or maybe wouldn't be proud to do. I mean, how do you draw that line, or do you?
It's just the way that I've done it is just talking to customers and listening to them. I had a customer last week, wanted a six shot cortado, right? And I kind of did a little head zing. I was like, a 6-shot cortado, ma'am? That is what you are wanting? And she's like, yeah, I would love that. I said, absolutely. And so it made her a 6-shot cortado and it only had like half inch of milk on it, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
And gave it to her. She goes, this tastes really bad. I'm like, yeah, it does. She goes, you knew it would taste bad and you gave it to me? I said, well, that's what you asked for. And she goes, well, can you give me something different? I said, sure will. Let me tell you about this drink that we have. I think you'll like it better than that. And tell you what, if you don't like it, you don't got to pay for it. I have used that line so much when dealing with customers because it's saying like, hey, I'm willing to take a loss making this drink for you in an attempt to give you what you're looking for, at least an idea of what you're looking for. Right. And so, yeah, we have our quality. We have the coffees that we want to bring in. I love natural processed coffees. I'm a very rare breed nowadays, but I love it. Right. And, we have never had a customer say, oh, man, when are you going to put a wash coffee on the grinders? They don't ask like that. They just say, what coffee is this? Right. Because they've grown to trust us because we have gone out of our way to say, hey, listen, this is the drink you got. You didn't like it. Let's make you this one. If you don't like it, you don't got to pay for it. What do you think? I have probably a 9 out of 10 success rate with that. I have maybe had one person ever tell me, yeah, dude, I didn't really like that either. And I said, no worries, dude. We have some great teas. We have really cold water. Do you like Topo Chico? Like we always make sure that we're trying to at least serve them, give them a beverage of some sort, because that's why they're coming to a coffee shop. They're coming the main reason to drink a cup of coffee, probably get some work done, meet with, a friend or two. And I think it's up to us to realize the job of barista, that title's really changed. It's not just about making coffee. More so, the word barista, I like to think of us more as acoustic bartenders, right? You go into a bar and you say, hey, I want to grab a drink, don't know what you got. And, the bartender will look at you and say, okay, cool. You want you a clear liquor or dark liquor type of person, right? You got to go through those questions with your bartender. What we'll do when somebody comes up to our shop and they'll say, man, I really don't know what I want to get. I don't really know what y'all do here. I'll say, no worries. Hey, do you want something with coffee or without coffee? They'll say, oh, with coffee. I say, okay, cool. You want milk or no milk? I could do some milk. All right. Do you want it sweet or not sweet? Well, let's do something not sweet. I'm like, cool. Do you want it hot or cold? Oh, let's do something cold. Awesome. I will go back and I will make them a drink that fits all of that criteria and give it to them. And they're sitting there, they know they got exactly the drink that they wanted and that they asked for. It's no longer about the type of coffee that they're getting, but it's about the experience that they're getting and the hospitality that they're getting that keeps them coming back, right? If the quality of our coffees was so important, Starbucks wouldn't exist. Pete's wouldn't exist. That's terrible coffee.
Excellent
for
point,
coffee
yeah.
people, right? It's not about them having the product that is just like, oh my gosh, no, it's because they're willing to sit there with you and say, okay, what are the million options that we have do you want today? And they will make it exactly the way that you want it made. They won't argue with you. They won't demonize you. They won't do any of that, right? They'll sit there and they say, hey, let me try to serve you something that you want, because they understand that serving somebody, it is an opportunity. And that's something that I try to make sure I communicate with my entire staff. Is like, hey, we have an opportunity to serve people in this city. And that's a very almost religious thing for me in the city, is taking care of our neighbors, because these neighbors, man, this is a hard city. I have seen some of the strongest people in my life lose everything in this city. I have seen people lose it all. I have seen people lose their body, their mind, their soul. The city does something to you. It's hard. I had a customer that he worked on the top of the U.S. Bank building, and he had the cush job, making 6 figures a year. He would come in every morning to get a cup of coffee from me. And I saw him 2 years later, and he was living on the streets out of a tent. And I asked him what happened. It's like, well, my wife left me, lost my job, didn't have any other course of action, so I ended up here. This city will take some of the strongest, chew them up, and spit them out. And I think that us as coffee quotation professionals, right? However we want to classify ourselves, whether we're a barista or, we're roasters or we're barbacks, right? Whatever professional that we are in that, we have an opportunity to look after our neighbors. Because if we're not doing that, we're not doing our job. At the very basic of coffee, it's all about hospitality. It's about serving, right? It's about serving the people who are coming in to be a part of our lives, because that's what coffee shops are. A coffee shop is, I think it was James from Blue Bottle. He said this whenever he had taken over the Handsome Coffee place years ago. He was talking to a couple people there at the shop, and, there was a situation that happened over there between, a employee that was working and a customer who was trying to get a drink. And, James leaned over the counter and he had said, hey, a coffee shop is where you take, a significant other on a first date. They end up, becoming your spouse. A coffee shop is where you have a buddy that you sit down with, you end up starting a business together. It is a place where you have fellowship, you have camaraderie. It is a space of safety. And he's like, I'm sorry that your experience today didn't entail all of that, right? And that really stuck with me, right? I thought that was a really cool way to look at the coffee world, looking at our spaces, not just as a space to serve great coffee, great ethically sourced coffee out of, but it's also a place to hold people's hands sometime and tell them, like, hey, it's going to be okay. This coffee's on me.
That is something that no matter what city you find yourself in, it may be a hard place like LA, but even if it's a small town, people have needs. And I love what you're saying about at the very basic level, it's about that hospitality. And you can totally, like you're saying, you can, approach it from that perspective of opportunity, like that through line that you're using here in our conversation. Like, people look for that. And we've said that on the show here before, like, this is one of the reasons why people have supported small businesses so much during the pandemic, because part of them is tied up with that business, and it's an inevitable part. You can't really separate it. And yes, there are a lot of times where people overstep their bounds, and there are complex, entanglements that happen, and sometimes those are the risks of doing something that transcends the transactional, right? And I think you've just said so many great and meaningful things here about the coffee shop experience, and it seems really consistent with what you're talking about with how you approach the coffee roasting before you were even serving coffee under the name of MadLab. Then you started serving coffee. I mean, this all was part of the plan, or was it just a natural, like one thing led to another, kind of like before?
It was a process. It was more of a process getting to that point because, I did what every other young buck in coffee does. I was that coffee bro, man. I was that annoying coffee bro. I'm going to be honest. I was the dude coming into work with a milk pitcher on my belt loop saying, let's get to work, guys. I was that annoying guy. And it took a while for me to have healthy people in my life that really showed me what all of this stuff was about. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I talk to my staff. I say, hey, listen, stop talking for a while and listen to what people around you are saying, people that are trying to help, that are trying to talk to you, right? Because it's really easy to just try to do what you want to do, right? You're like, this is my company, my world, my money. I want to do it my way. Unfortunately, life isn't a Frank Sinatra song. You can't have it my way, right? You have to step back for a second and say, what's needed? Because if you're not providing something that's needed, what's the point of you doing whatever you're doing at all? What's the point? If it's something that somebody walking down the street, if you can't change their life with it, whether that be your service or your product, why are you doing it? That's just kind of a waste. It's just another Instagram handle that's posting pictures of the same content that everybody else does. It's not doing anything to grow people or to grow a community or to help a neighborhood, right? And that was the biggest thing that I learned living in downtown 10 years now, right? People don't think of downtown LA as a neighborhood, but it is the biggest, most vibrant neighborhood you've ever been to, right? I thought, when we were talking about how a local coffee shop can really make an impact, on the neighborhood during the protest of last summer, right? I was out there. I wanted to see what's going on with the neighborhood. I'm trying to learn things that are happening, and everybody is on Spring Street. Spring Street's one of the main streets that goes down just the spine of downtown Los Angeles, right? And everybody's destroying everything, and it was kind of weird watching all of the destruction kind of happen that night. But I may or may not have clapped when someone threw a chair through the Starbucks window. I was just like, no way. No, they didn't. And like taking pictures, and it wasn't funny, but it was just kind of one of those like, wow, somebody actually did it. Right. And I'm watching, and people are just going into stores, going into restaurants. And, a lot of the restaurants, they were being hilarious. They're like, hey, dude, here's a taco. Hey, dude, here's a taco. Hey, dude, here's a taco. Just while like everybody was just all about it. Everybody was destroying everything. Like the block was just all in unison saying like, yeah, let's burn it down. Right. That was the whole mindset of the block. Right. And so I'm out there watching my neighbors, being in my neighborhood, seeing what's going on. And then there's this little tiny shop in downtown called Spring for Coffee. Right. It is one of the oldest specialty shops in downtown Los Angeles. Right. It's been there forever. And it's maybe 100 square feet, maybe. And that was my regular go-to coffee shop every single morning because I had lived across the street from it. And I'm watching, and a crew of people were going to throw a city trash can through the window. And a group of people went in front of it and says, no, guys, nice, not this place. And they're like, why? They're like, dude, this is the coffee shop. And they all looked, and they put down trash cans like, we forgot. We didn't even notice that was the coffee shop. My bad. You're going to be here at 8? Yeah, I'm going to be here at 8. Cool. I'll see you. That was the only business on the block that didn't have the windows taken out, didn't have something thrown through it. Every other business on the block destroyed, windows down. The glass companies made so much money that next week. But they left this little coffee shop alone. And it was because that's where they go every morning. It's part of that routine. They know the crew there is going to take care of them. They didn't need to have anybody sitting outside telling people, no, not this one. The block did that on their own. The neighborhood did that on their own. It was beautiful. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand a coffee shop is. A lot of people look at a coffee shop as a money maker. Man, if you're trying to get into coffee because you think you're going to make a lot of money, you are going to be very disappointed. You're going to be very disappointed. Being in the coffee world is not about making oodles and noodles of money. It's about serving your neighborhood. And I think if you lose that, you'll end up having a company that you wouldn't be excited to go to if you were a customer.
Well said. Man, what a great illustration. You have been running your own space now, and you just recently, it was a year anniversary, right?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. And what a journey to, it must feel full circle to have now the roasting and the shop back to kind of where you were when you first started getting into coffee. Mm-hmm. Now you're the owner, and you've got your operating philosophies and things that you've been practicing, and you're listening to the community, and you're setting up this I don't want to say flagship store, because you're not a flag planting coffee shop, but I'm curious about how the process went for you of opening this store and having to both face the reality of opening a store and how you can live out your ideals through it. How do those two things meet?
Well, it's one of those things. It just kind of fell into place. I'm kind of a advocate of, if you're doing the right things in life, like, life ends up taking care of you, right? And earlier that year, we actually had a space in downtown Los Angeles that I just closed down. I do not have too much pride to where I will try to keep something going when I know it's not going to work, right? We were at the base of a skyscraper in downtown. The security guy came to me and said, hey, we just lost 80% of all of our tenants here at the building. And I said, well, this shop was fun while it lasted. It's a couple months old. Well, time to turn in the keys. So that's what we did. I just said, nope, not going to do it anymore. Here are the keys back. The building said, all right, yeah, that makes sense. And, they let us leave, and we just worked as a roastery for a good couple months until we got a call from Minotti's. Now, our space used to be Minotti's. And most people locally know that, but I think most people who are new to coming to our space, they don't know that used to be Nicely Stomping Grounds. And here's the thing about Nicely, like, he is Mr. Los Angeles Coffee. I don't care what anybody says. Like, he is the dude. When you get off a plane at LAX and somebody says, where should I go get a cup of coffee? They say, oh, you got to go see Nicely. You got to go to Minotti's, right? That's just how it's always been for years. And there's a reason for it, right? A lot of even the stuff that I've been talking about, like serving people, I've learned that from going to visit Nicely and getting a coffee from them, right? And so Minotti's reached out to us to say, hey, listen, we have this space on Sunset. What do you think? And I said, I got to talk Nicely. I got to talk to Nicely. I'm going to make sure. And so I went and visited, Nicely. And I said, hey, man, we got reached out to take over this space. What do you think? And Nicely was like, dude, I'm so excited for you. Yes. Like, dude, do it. Like, I would love to see it. And he has been one of the strongest supporters of ours since we opened. He was there on opening day, and having the support of being in that space that Nicely had started to build, right? Us coming in and doing our style of service, it matched, right? We didn't have to do this kind of, well, Minotti's used to do it this way, why won't you do it like this for us, right? It was just like, hey, man, this is like the same experience. Thank you, guys. Right. And so that was a cool thing for us when we took over that space. But I mean, it was a very fast process. We got the call on a Friday, did paperwork on a Monday, and then opened up the next Monday. Right. We were open in about a week and a couple days because it was a turnkey operation. I just talked to my wife and I said, hey, what color do you want it to be? She's like, I'm thinking mint green. And I said, honey, are you sure? And she said, yes, Andrew, trust me. I said, okay. And I'm glad we did, because I think in those first couple of months, that's what really brought people to the shop. They're like, huh, what's that mint green thing over there? Oh, it's a coffee shop. Let's stop over there. But I mean, when we moved in July, August in 2020. And, I would like to tell myself that we've been doing really good because our quality of our coffee is amazing, right? I would love to tell myself that, but I know it's not. I know it is because of the first 2 months that we were there. Dude, we just lucked out. When we moved in, the coffee shop down the street from us, the closest one, they had to close for 2 weeks because they had a positive COVID case, right? A day after they closed, the other coffee shop across the street from them had to close for 2 weeks because they had a COVID case. Then we had 2 coffee shops up the block that just straight up had to close because of COVID. And so for the first couple months, we were the only coffee shop on the block. We were the only option. So we just lucked out. People would come up to the window for a cup of coffee. They say, hey, my normal place is closed. Let me just give regular cup of coffee from you. We'd say, okay. And so we give them a cup of coffee and say, hey, cool, have a good one. Come visit us again. They would take a few steps, down the sidewalk, and they turn back around. They're like, what kind of coffee is this? And they're like, oh, it's good. Glad you like it. And we were just able to introduce ourselves in a way that normally you're not able to do in Los Angeles. The hardest thing about running a coffee shop in Los Angeles is people knowing you exist. That is that's the hardest thing. There are coffee shops that have been here for 10 years that nobody's ever heard of or been to, right? It's I think the actual number, if you went to every restaurant, coffee shop, bar, whatever it is in LA, if you went to a new place every single day, it would take you 10,000 years to hit every single place that's in Los Angeles. And it's crazy of just how big the city is, how much stuff is here. And so when we opened that spot, I just looked back and I'm like, dude, I don't live in Hollywood, but very few people live in Hollywood, right? But we sat back and I said, okay, what does this community, what does this neighborhood need? What can I give them that they're asking for, right? And we sat down, we tried to figure it out the best that we can do with about 200 square feet of space, because that's how big the spot is. It's a tiny spot, right? We have room for 1 fridge. Right. So keeping things stocked up, definitely a challenge, but we're able to do it. But we sat back and like, okay, what can we offer this neighborhood with this space? And I have been blown away with just the response that people have had to it. It does make me kind of emotional doing things for so long here in Los Angeles, serving coffee for such a long time, that within 2-3 months of us being open, we're rated one of the top shops in Los Angeles by people like Eater LA and like Time Out magazine, or Time Out. I think it's a magazine, right? Stuff from LA Times. I mean, that's so special to me because it's kind of validation from the city that they're like, hey, we know you exist and we approve of it, right? That means so much to me for working here for so long, having not that type of hype, but that type of respect, right? And it's just like, hey, it's a 200 square foot space. We're not making millions over there, right? It's just not going to happen. There's only so many people that you can serve every day out of a 200 square foot space. And just knowing that that's always going to be a spot that's just about giving people a good cup of coffee and a place to escape to, just love it. It's exactly what I have always wanted a shop with our name on it to be. I don't want it to be this like weird corporate-y thing, right? Mostly because I don't care about doing the corporate stuff. I know people usually say, well, if you want to make corporate money, you do corporate things. And I'm like, cool. Definitely cool not making corporate money then, right? I'm very cool with, this thing that we've built being a very humble living, being this thing that everybody who's a part of it and has their hands on it, they're proud of what they do because they're proud of how we're serving our neighborhood, how we're serving our neighbors, and just what we're doing quality wise. I think it's so funny. We've been having this conversation, so long. I'm a roaster. We haven't really even talked about like how we roast coffee, our mindset of it. It's all been about, this subject matter of like serving people. And I think when it comes to like anybody who's listening of the, like, hey, I want to like start a shop, I want to start a roastery, they're looking at okay, how do I learn how to roast? How do I, sign a lease for a building, right? How do I take out a loan? You could do all of that, but if you don't know why you're serving that coffee, I think it's just wasted energy, right? I hope that when people listen to that, they sit down and say, okay, what does my neighborhood need? What do my neighbors need? Because MadLab, we actually have two mantras, right? And they came about because of how, we want to serve people, right? And how we want to be treated. And there are things that I have learned in my life. These are mantras that I personally have that I just had MadLab adopt because it's like, well, it's worked for me. I bet it could work for the company I have. And the first one is actually, it's actually from MASH, the television series.
Okay.
And I love MASH. I think it's the best bit of TV that has ever been on the airwaves. Like so many life lessons you can learn from watching the television show MASH.
It's a deep show for sure.
Oh, it's super deep. People don't understand, man. But I'm like such a MASH nerd. I'll go to Malibu where they still have the set up, and like I'll go stand out there and be like, "Yeah, I'm Hawkeye Pierce. What's up?" But they had this quote. It's like on season 5, and this guy's talking. He says, "Listen, everybody has two choices in life. You can either love people a whole lot more or a whole lot less. Which one do you want to do here?" Right? And I'm like, that's very true. I will always choose to love people a whole lot more every chance I get, even when it's inconvenient for me. I really try. And, there's a point where you've helped somebody as much as you can and as much as you're able to where you say, hey, listen, I got to love you a whole lot less now because I've given all that I can give. Right. And so for the company, it's a way for us to say like, hey, help this person as much as you can, but just know there may come a point where you have to say, sorry, I can't provide that for you. And I really wish I could. Right. And at that point, you have to just choose to love them a whole lot less and send them down the block to a different coffee shop that you think would fit what they need, or to a different coffee roaster that would fit the bill for the type of service that they want to do. Right. This is number one. Number two is be the person you needed when you were younger. I really wish I had somebody that could have walked me through this thing called coffee roasting when I first started. I really wish I had a mentor. I would give anything to go back in time and try harder to find a mentor that would have just taken me by his side. Like, man, I've almost lost MadLab 5-6 different times. There have been times where it's just me and my wife we're headed to the bank to close out the business account because I couldn't do it. I couldn't make it work. And then something happens that allows me to keep it going. Right. I think the best one was I had a client out here when I first started. He was my first big client. He was doing 100 pounds a week of coffee, really big operation he was doing. And, I said, hey, here's the coffee we have, everything's $10 a pound. And he's like, great, sounds good. Drop it off every day. I'm like, cool. How do you want me to go about picking up payment? Right. And he was just like, oh, we'll figure that out. Don't worry. And lesson learned there. So net 15 turned into net 30, net 30 turned into net 60, net 60 turned into net 90, net 90 turned into net 120, until I was at the point I had no more coffee. I had to collect this bill, or I had to close my business. Right. And I went to the guy and I said, hey, listen, man, I need payment. And he said, I'm sorry, who are you? Wow. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm your coffee guy. He goes, you're not my coffee guy. And I was like, what? And I learned a very valuable lesson here for being in coffee, especially coffee in LA. People in Los Angeles don't like to pay their bills. They just don't. They just don't. And I don't think that's a harsh or rude thing to say. Anybody who is in Los Angeles will say, yep, Andrew's right. Yep, that's pretty accurate there. And so I had I went to my wife. I told her, honey, we're going to have to close down the business. There's no way we're going to be able to bring this back. And she's like, I understand. You gave it your all. You tried. I'm here for you, whatever you need. I said, okay. And, I went to the coffee shop that I had been working at for this guy who's very, very rough around the edges. And I'm sitting in front of his shop, and he's like, why are you crying in front of my shop? And I'm like, dude, listen, I'm having a tough one. I have to close my company. He goes, why? I told him what had happened. He goes, man, you stupid. You don't know how to collect in LA? You don't know how to collect? I said, dude, what? I can't pay a collection service. Like, I can't. What do you want me to go do? Shake him down? He goes, man, I'll call you tomorrow. I have all your money. And I was like, no, you won't. And now where this shop is at, he is friends with, it's backed up right against Skid Row, right? So this owner, he knows all the homeless guys who are just awesome. Like, these are the homeless guys that look after the block, who living the best life. They'll come and they're like, hey, dude, I found a box of peaches. You want to split this peach with me? And you're like, let's go, right? It is a whole community over there. I love it. And I get a call the next day, and it's from the owner of that company who owed me all that money. And he just called me. He's like, get over here now. Get these people out of here and come get your money. I was like, first off, I didn't send anybody over there. But second of all, thank you for having my money. And so I hightailed it over there, and I look inside this guy's shop, and it is wall to wall of these guys from the block. And I'm like, I know this guy. And so I see the owner come through, and he has an envelope like 5 inches thick, right? And he gives it to me. He's like, get these people out of here. This is not how you do business. I looked at him and said, well, first off, you pay your bills. Yes. First off, this is owed, so thank you. But the second of all, I didn't call any of these guys. And when the guy comes out, he goes, coffee guy, right? And I looked at him and said, yep. He's like, you been paid? Yeah. He goes, all right, boys, let's go. And they all empty out into the street.
So excellent.
And I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, all right, well, good luck finding somebody else to roast your coffee. I'm out of here. So I'm like, what just happened? And I think to myself, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what happened. And so I went to my buddy's shop and drove up. I said, dude, what did you do? He goes, did you get paid? I said, yeah, I got paid. He goes, give me the envelope. Gives me the envelope. And he's sitting outside on the curb smoking a cigarette. And then all of a sudden, I'm just trying to talk to him. He's telling me to shut up. He's like, Andrew, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. I'm teaching you right now. And I'm like, okay, fine. And all of a sudden, these guys turn the corner in a single file line, and they get in front of the shop. And I noticed this envelope that he had gotten. It's all $5 bills, right? I'm like, why are these all in $5 bills? Well, takes one $5 bill out, gives it to one guy, then the next guy. And he has a pay line going just over and over. And he's paying each of these guys just $5 bills.
Oh my God.
He gets to the end of the line. I'm looking at him. He takes about, 10 or 15 fives for himself, telling me he's going to take the wife to a nice dinner. And he gives me my money. He's like, listen, Andrew, there is a way to deal with things. The best thing that you can learn from this is don't give anybody net 15 or net 30 when you just meet them. He's like, you're just, dude, come on. Who does that?
Right. Okay.
And I'm like, all right. Right. And so there have been weird things like that have happened that has kept my company going. And it's not by any doing of my own. I just sat there. I went to the house, and, I'm just like, honey, we don't need to go to the bank. When you talk about running a business, right? I would give anything to go back in time to find somebody who could mentor me, right? All of that weird stories to say, man, I wouldn't have had to go through that really weird, not fun experience if somebody would have just been by my side and taught me how to do that. So now, because that was my experience, I want to make sure nobody else has that experience. And so I tell baristas, owners all the time, hey, if you need anything, reach out to me. talk to me. I'll talk to some of my partners for 2-3 hours some nights because they're going through something at their shop with their landlord, right? During 2020, so many of our partners were getting threatened to be kicked out of their spaces, right? And they would be talking to me 2-3 hours, and I would go over and I would talk to their landlord and say, hey, listen, let's be realistic here. Nobody else is going to lease out the space. You're going to spend out more money whitewalling it than to let them keep renting it, right? So just take what you can get for them right now and figure out a deal later, and they'll give you a cup of coffee every morning. And a lot of landlords were like, actually, yeah, you're right. Yeah, let's do that. Be the person that you needed when you were younger. I'm trying to be that person as much as I can for other people that are in this industry right now. That's a lot of the reasons why I do this stuff on Twitch, where I'll just roast and I'll say, hey, this is how I'm doing everything. If you have a question, put it in the chat. I will answer it. If you want to know how we look at sourcing our coffee, this is how we do it. Hey, you want to know what type of profile we're doing for this coffee? It's this, right? Because it is so weird to me that people are so close-handed with knowledge in this industry. It's like, if you know where to Google, you can Google everything, but it's gotten a lot better the last couple of years, I will say. But even still, for roasting, there are a lot of kids that I have an open door policy, right? It's like, hey, if you ever want to come to see how coffee's roasted, come see me. Like, I roast on Sundays, come to the roastery. Right? And as long as you give me a heads up, I'm cool with it. If you just walk in, I'm going to have a question that, who are you and what are you doing here? But, but it's, if we all just tried to be the person that we needed when we were younger, I think the world would be a little bit of a better place to live in.
I love all of this so much.
Hey, you loved all of it, but man, my wife did not like the last 6 years. She did not like all of it. It was
Well, I'm so glad that the coffee industry has you in it, and I'm so glad that MadLab has been able to stay around. And obviously, your community is so supportive. Back to what we were talking about, the community before, Mm-hmm. And not only that, it just seems like it's meant to be. And the way that you approach people, the way that you approach business is something that I think anyone listening to this should examine and see how they can apply that kind of a thing in the way that they operate theirs. So this has been such a fantastic conversation. Thank you. And how can people stay in touch with you, stay up to date with what you're doing and all that fun stuff?
Well, I think the easiest way to stay up to date is our Instagram, of course, because it's 2021 and the world exists on social media, right? You could stay up to date with what we're doing on Instagram. Another platform that we're really building and having a lot of fun with is Discord, actually. We have the links on our Instagram to join our Discord. And, that's a place where if you have a question about coffee, post a question about coffee. If you want to know what kind of equipment, is out there, it's on there. If you have equipment for sale, you can put it on there. If you're a barista looking for work and you're in Los Angeles, you can go there and find a job. I've gone to a lot of the shops here in town and say, hey, join the Discord. There will be people that will be asking to be hired. They'll be on the Discord and you can just reach out to them on there. I'm trying to do like a better version of Craigslist, but for coffee stuff.
I got it. Yeah.
Right. You need a job, you need housing, whatever it may be. I think that's one of the best ways to get a hold of us. And of course, in person, would love to see anybody who comes by the shop and make them a cup of coffee. And of course, Twitch. We're streaming live on Twitch. That's just been a weird, fun thing. I'm going to be honest. I'm doing that because I enjoy it. Is it super successful? No, but I enjoy it so much.
Oh, man. Well, again, thank you for joining us on the show. Thanks for being you and what you do.
That's very Mr. Rogers of you, and I love it.
Well, everybody, I hope that this conversation has really had an impact on you. I feel like I just want a small percentage of the kind of passion and energy that Andrew has for myself. And I'm probably not alone in feeling that way. But if we take anything from this conversation, I hope it's that we need to be focused on what it means to run our businesses even our careers with integrity, meaning, and people at the center of all of it. So a huge thank you to Andrew Sinclair for joining us at Keys to the Shop on this Founder Friday. We so appreciate you sharing your story, your passion, and it's definitely made a huge impact. If you want to learn more about MadLab Coffee, you can go to madlab.co. That's madlab.co. And you can also follow them on Instagram over at MadLab Coffee. Definitely visit their store in Los Angeles. If you get to talking with Andrew, as I have in other conversations, he is absolutely the best guide for coffee in Los Angeles too. So if you're traveling to the city, visit his store, and he's going to set you on the right path to experience the coffee culture in LA like nobody else. So if you have any questions, comments, or feedback from me about this show or any other episode of Keys to the Shop, please send me an email. I always love hearing from listeners, even if it's just a message to say hello. It would be great if you'd email chris@keystotheshop.com. That's also the email to reach out to if you're interested in Keys to the Shop consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. And so that concludes this Founder Friday episode with Andrew Sinclair of MadLab Coffee. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to join me on the show. Remember to subscribe, share this show far and wide. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.